So what I'm going to share with you today is sort of the continuation of my journey of learning and growing through this movement. Certainly we never said Conscious Capitalism, the book, is the last word on the subject. We're all learning as we go along. And for me, the last few years, being involved with Bob Chapman on Everybody Matters, took me to another level in terms of understanding and deepening our relationship with people and cherishing every single human being. And seeing what Bob was able to do with 95 acquisitions over the last 25 years, never sold a single company, took mostly dying and broken companies, people who were almost in post-traumatic stress, having been laid off numerous times, reduced to destitute status, picking up aluminum cans on the street sometimes just to try to keep their families fed. And those same companies and those same people in those same towns now thriving. Broken, burned out people are now flourishing, and their children, and their families, and their communities. I saw the power of leadership, the power of intention. And you start to recognize that this is the one idea with unlimited potential. Everything else has limits, but anything rooted in the human spirit has no limits. That's what we know. So the most powerful form of renewable energy on this planet is what we can do with human beings. So that expanded my thinking about what business can do. This journey of consciousness has no end to it. And then being involved with Nilima on writing Shakti Leadership, which is about becoming whole. We are fragmented inside between the masculine, feminine, between our higher self, our child self, etc. How do you become whole? And it turns out whole is a synonym for healing. So when you repair the brokenness, the fragmentation inside, you're also healing at some level. So I started to get a little bit obsessed with this idea of healing. And some of you know I've used an acronym on purpose, healing as the qualities of a great purpose. I think I have something called ADS. It's the acronym disorder syndrome. Sorry. But then I started to think of it beyond the acronym. I said, healing. There's more to it than just an acronym. I mean, yes, it does apply there, but the reality is that we live in a world of almost unimaginable, unbearable suffering all the time. Most of it is out of sight for us. We're truly fortunate and blessed, but there are billions that are struggling just to get by. There are people dealing with every kind of devastation every single day. There is profound suffering and pain. Not only with human beings. Think about the tens of billions of animals who are caged up, being tortured as we speak. So it's a world of extraordinary pain, beauty and grace, but it's also a world of extraordinary pain and suffering. And therefore, I believe that healing needs to be the meta purpose for all of us as individuals and all of our organizations. Because if we are not part of the healing consciously, if we don't choose to be part of the healing, I do believe that we may unconsciously be part of the hurting. We may be adding to people's burdens. People don't need any more burdens. People have enough. But that is the reality of most business, most traditional business. Steven Pinker has documented in great detail that we are living in the most peaceful time in human history through his book, The Better Angels of Our Nature. Physical violence is definitely down sharply. By 1995, we were 99% compared to historic norms. But the reality of our age is that psychic suffering is actually on the rise. So we look at the percentage of people suffering from depression and anxiety and a variety of other things like that. It's really extraordinary. And nothing to do with prosperity. In fact, the prosperous countries see more of that. That suffering is truly intense, and a lot of it links back to work, as we will talk about. Now, a lot of the suffering on the planet is self-inflicted, in the sense that we humans suffer out of ignorance. I met this amazing woman named Edith Eva Eger a couple of years ago at Deepak Chopra's Sages and Scientists Conference. She's a Holocaust survivor, was at Auschwitz. Long and amazing story of her life, 88 years old at that point. Was actually rescued from the gas chambers by Joseph Mengele himself. because she was 16 years old and a dancer, and he told her to go the other side. She had to entertain those guards in Mengele for those years. Almost died. Was rescued by American soldiers. She was actually in a pile of bodies that were left for dead because the Nazis were killing as many as possible before the Americans came. And there were bodies on top of her, and her arm was sticking out, and one of her fingers was moving. And this American GI walked by, and he saw the moving finger, and he dragged her out of there. And then she survived, 70 pounds, skeletal. Came to this country, for 20 years had post-traumatic stress and survivor guilt. Could not tell anybody what she had been through. Finally had to go back to Auschwitz, relive the experience, and then she was able to move past it. She said something very profound. She said, the greatest Nazi is inside us. We are causing our own suffering. Roy talked about that as well. And that we are victims of victims. So we inflict suffering on each other. Again, out of ignorance, right? Out of fear, out of insecurity. And we know how to deal with these things. We know through consciousness practices and so forth. We can help people not suffer in that way, and we can prevent the suffering that is inflicted by our own people on each other within the organization. A great deal of this suffering does relate to work. And here's the key point. Almost all of it is unnecessary, and it serves no higher purpose. You know, it's one thing if you suffer a bit and you prevent a huge amount of suffering elsewhere because of your suffering. Well worth it. This suffering serves no higher purpose. It is unnecessary. We have to figure out a way to move past it, to heal. So inspired by what Roy is doing. And healing is something we all feel we need. I know I feel like I need it. We need to heal ourselves. We need to heal our families, our communities. We need to heal our companies, our countries, not just this country. There are many countries that also need that. We have to heal the planet and all the life that's on it. And we need to heal the past, the present and the future. One of the things that allowed South Africa to move past its ugly history of apartheid was the Truth and Reconciliation process that Nelson Mandela and Desmond Tutu did. And the fact that Mandela had gone through his own inner journey, so he could be in that place, so that when this event happened, it would not then result in decades of revenge-fueled bloodshed, tear that country apart. Something similar happened in Costa Rica in 1946. They had a bloody civil war. We know what happened after the civil war in this country. There was a century of further suffering, right? In Costa Rica, they disbanded the army. The leader who took over after that civil war says, you know what? We don't need an army. The only country voluntarily to do that, ever. And so we're going to create an army of healthcare workers and an army of teachers. And today they have universal literacy and some of the highest healthcare, public healthcare in the world. And many other things that make it. So we need to heal the past, the present, and the future. The reality is most traditional businesses are in fact sources of hurting. Yes, they're sources of livelihood and income, but they're also sources of suffering. Because you take healthy, whole people, relatively coming in early in their careers, full of idealism, promise, and over time, because of the way in which we structure our organizations and how we operate, they become cynical, they become disengaged, they develop all kinds of chronic conditions, and they burn out. That's the reality. And then they have to go somewhere else to recover so that they can come back again and then suffer all of that, right? And here's the great irony and tragedy. Even our healing professions have become places of great suffering. Nurses, doctors, veterinarians have some of the highest rates of depression, drug abuse, drug addiction, even suicide. And I think Frederick talked about some of that yesterday, right? With nurses and doctors. Who's taking care of the caregivers? So something is wrong. The way we work isn't working. And remember, the way we work came from the military. Command and control, hierarchy, strategy, tactics, operations, front lines, staff, headquarters. Those are all military terms. The military mindset came along with those metaphors. Business is not war. By the way, it's the first time I'm doing this, so I don't know what's next. Okay. The fact is, we talk about the cost of doing business, and we have great detailed ways of accounting for that, right? Cost accounting. But the human costs are hidden, and they're unacceptably high. And I'm going to share with you some stories, because we do have an epidemic of silent suffering. Most people are stoic. Most people have pride. And they're suffering in their job, and they're dealing with crises, financial and other, and at home. But they will show up, and they'll do what they can. But meanwhile, inside, there is deep, deep suffering. And we have no way of, they say you will see it when you believe it. Usually we think we'll believe it when we see it. Actually, you'll see it when you believe it. When you start looking for signs of distress, they are everywhere. Fred Kaufman, one of our heroes in this movement, grew up in Argentina in the 70s at a time when we had the military junta there. Thousands of people were being disappeared. He would ride his bike past these government buildings. Later on learned there were people being tortured in the basements of those buildings. Later killed and never found. As he said, that there are no death camps in corporations, but many apparently successful companies hide great suffering in their basements. But we know, and many of you are exemplars of this, done right, business can actually alleviate suffering and elevate joy. So this is not about healing businesses. This is not about saying, let's all start yoga studios and massage places, right? This is about business itself as healing. Doesn't matter what you're doing. Business itself is a source of healing. Why? Because you're creating value, you're helping people, you're meeting their real needs, you're giving people an opportunity for fulfillment, for purpose, for meaning. All of that is healing. Any kind of business can be a healing business. In fact, every business needs to be a healing business. So the question is, how can business do that? How can we be a source and a force for healing in the world? And I do believe business has to play the dominant role there. 20 of the $25 trillion of economic activity in this country is in the business sector. $3.5 trillion is government, $1.5 trillion is civil society, nonprofits. This is where everything is happening. How can we be a source and a force for healing? Well, as James Baldwin said, not everything that is faced can be changed, but nothing can be changed until it is faced. We have to face up to this reality that, yes, we may indeed be causing this, not deliberately, but this could well be an unintended byproduct of our business. And the fact is, and Roy alluded to this a little bit, the majority of working people with full-time jobs, live lives of quiet desperation, constantly on the edge of disaster. Here are some sad statistics. I was shocked. 50% of Americans could not raise $2,000 if they had to in 30 days. Your car breaks down, your heating system, your roof, whatever it is, a health problem, crisis with one of your kids, you're that close to losing it all. 96% of them have full-time jobs. Unemployment is 4.2%, okay? How would you feel if one of your full-time employees had to lose everything because they had an accident? Would they feel comfortable coming to somebody in the company and saying, you know what, I need help? Most people don't. Nearly 60% of American households are technically insolvent. Negative net worth, adding to their debt every year, going further in debt. Forget about retirement. What's going to happen next year? So this is the level of stress, the financial stress and duress that people are under. And we have no idea. Most of us, because we don't see it. It's not in our face. So I was with the CEO of a company called Apple Tree Answers. They're a call center company. And within most companies, it's almost like a caste system. So they're the full-time employees, the professionals, the college-educated, all of that, who run the stuff. And then there are the people who actually do the work, 80%. So here the employee turnover 3%, engagement 90% in that company. Here the employee turnover 118%, engagement 15%. 118%. He went to an industry conference and said, what's your turnover? 118. He said, wow, that's great. Industry average is 150. Right? So these lives have nothing in common with each other. He says if our CFO is driving to work and her car hits a big pothole and there's some damage, right? All she has to do is call AAA and they tow her away and then she gets dropped off. The car gets taken to the Mercedes dealer and it's later on in the day it's delivered to the office and she gets there an hour late and everybody says, oh my God, are you okay? And then one of their hourly workers also driving the same road has the same problem, doesn't have AAA, doesn't have insurance to cover that. Hundreds of dollars of damage, has no way really, so has to call a friend, gets to the office 3 hours late, gets reprimanded by the supervisor and gets a check mark against her record. 3 times that happens, you're out. And then she's told, now go and be nice to our customers. Go answer phones and give them a great experience. Okay. It's a non-event for the CFO. It's a big, big deal. Potentially life-changing event for that person, right? You have no idea. So they started to recognize these things, and then they created a program called Dream On. And they told people, it's like Make-A-Wish. What are the things that, what are you suffering with in your life? Well, how can we help? What are things that we can do? And for a few weeks, nobody responded. And finally, one woman wrote, she said, I'm desperate, I'm sorry, I don't know where to turn. My husband stopped paying child support, and we got evicted a week ago, and I've been living in the car with my 2 kids for a week now. And I just can't do it anymore. She was embarrassed to have to say that. And the CEO said, I felt a deep sense of shame. It's a full-time employee. He's homeless. So they got her into a hotel that night. Within a week, they got her into a new apartment, helped with all this. And then the floodgates opened. People started, quite a few of their people were homeless. Right? And there's all kinds of other suffering that started to come out. So again, when you have mechanisms to elicit that, it will come out. You will learn about it. A lot of these things have to do with the culture. This is how things are done in this industry, and that's, we're almost a slave to that. Well, no. One of the things we have to do is break the rules. Kill all stupid rules. Kill all stupid norms, all practices. Examine everything, right? So there's a company called JBN Consulting in Atlanta. Where's Nigel? Nigel is right there, ex-McKinsey. They started this company, and one of the things they were determined was that in consulting, Monday to Thursday, you're gone, right? And therefore, your kids grow up without you, and you grow up, you don't get to see them growing up. And once that's gone, it's gone. That's a pretty high price to pay. Nobody questions it. That's how we do things in consulting, right? They started this company, and they said, all our clients will be local, nobody has to travel, because the children are stakeholders. Simple change. If there's a lot of demand in Dallas, we'll open an office in Dallas. Why do we have to impose this massive price? Right? You lose the childhood of your own kids because one parent is not there. And by the way, they have 3 of the top 20 consultants in the country working for them because this matters. This doesn't put them at a disadvantage, it actually advantages them because now it's a human place. Another company, Power Home Remodeling, where's Asher? It's a company in Philadelphia. Where's Asher? He's here somewhere. There he is on the back. Yeah. Amazing company. Again, in a business where you don't normally associate that, but they take young people who have been told by counselors and parents and others, you're not very bright, you're not very smart, you don't seem to have very many gifts, set your expectations low. They don't expect anything out of themselves. And here's a company that is the expectation-shattering company. They take these people within and they train them and they give them this extraordinary culture of caring and openness. Within years, they're earning 6 figures. The company is growing rapidly, 2,000 employees all over the country. Here's a symbol of what's going on there. This young woman said, I came out to my co-workers before I came out to my friends and family. I feel safer here. Remember somebody said, I wish home could be like work, right? This company has been rated the #1 company in the country to work for millennials, for young people. And they're doing it in an industry you don't associate these kinds of practices with, which is what makes it even more interesting. Another company I came across, Ram Construction in Bellingham, Washington. Small company, started by two guys who grew up in construction. They said it's brutal. People yell at you and scream, and they have no idea. It's extreme macho culture, gone to its limits. And they were determined not to have. So when they started their own company, they came up with this idea of a balanced transaction. They asked the employees, what are the two things you care most about? And we'll make sure we deliver those. And then we'll tell you the two things we care about, and please make sure you can do that. So we want good pay, and we want to be able to be there for our kids, our families. Okay, we'll make sure we do that. Okay, our promise. What do we need from you? Safety. And that's understandable, right? In that industry. That's just prudence. Second thing we need from you is kindness. Very few things will get you fired, but consistently being unkind to other people will get you fired in this company. Again, you don't expect that in construction, right? It's a place of healing. There's a line of applicants trying to get into this company. Nobody ever leaves, and all these businesses, by the way, thriving, right? They're growing faster, and all those. You almost don't even have to make that point anymore. Confronting social sadness. There are things happening in society. Business can do something about them. Greyston Bakery, you heard a little bit about them, right? This was started by a rabbi in Yonkers 20 years ago with open hiring. You need a job, you put your name on a list, they just go down the list. Why? Because 70 million Americans have a prison record. As many Americans have a prison record as have a college degree. And the most doors are closed to them. So a young man named Dion, who spoke at our conference in Philadelphia, he said, if it weren't for this company, I would either be dead or back in jail. 3 times he'd been in jail. Every time nobody would give him a job. He ended up back on the street doing what he had to do in order to survive. They say we give people a first chance, not even a second chance. There are people who never get a first chance. And we don't hire people to bake brownies. We bake brownies to hire people. And there are quite a few companies now that are actually stepping into this void, that are deliberately hiring people with challenge. Doug Rao is one of them. He's not here anymore, but Daily Table in Dorchester that he started. There are a lot of people with ankle bracelets. Prisons. Again, not a business, although it is becoming more in the private sector now. Prison in Angola, the Angola State Penitentiary in Louisiana, used to be the bloodiest prison in America. They had to bring in fire engines to hose down the cement floors from blood. And a new warden came in, he said, we're going to make it the safest. And over 8 or 9 years, they did that. And they launched something, their rodeo. They had 60,000 acres of land and 6,000 men on basically on death row or life sentences. And they launched a rodeo, and now they have 85,000 people who attended that thing, and there are men on death row serving cotton candy to little kids. You think that's a healing environment? Brazil, I was at the Vatican at a conference, and these people were talking about these prisons that they were running. They were converting them from the old way to this different healing way. They took the solitary confinement cells and made them into meditation and prayer rooms. One person coming into that prison made the difference for 7,000 prisoners, right, and their futures. Okay, I'm almost out of time, so I'm going to move a little fast. Healing communities. Houston. I know we have a number of people here from Houston, right? The devastation that was there. A company called H-E-B, which is a grocery chain. Extraordinary company. Here's a message somebody sent out. I'll see your FEMA and Red Cross and raise you my Texas grocery store chain. This is called disaster. They have an extraordinary capacity to go out there when something bad happens, and they are right there helping the community. That's one of their stores. By the way, most of their stores reopened literally. Only a few of their stores remained closed more than a couple of days. And they made every heroic effort to reopen. We have full-blown self-contained mobile kitchens on wheels, feeding 2,000 people an hour. Send them right into the hurricane areas. We feed the first responders, evacuees. Often we get there before the Red Cross. As I walked into the store, people would come up and hug me and thank us for making the effort to open because Kroger across the street wasn't, Walmart wasn't. One woman walked up and started crying and hugged me and thanked us for being open. When was the last time you were hugged for something you did at work? It doesn't happen. How often do people get moved to tears in a positive way because of something that happens at work? Now, whether an organization is a healing organization or a hurting organization really has a lot to do with the leader. We talked about this a little bit throughout this conference. Leaders do set the tone because human beings, we're capable of extraordinary acts of kindness and altruism, but we're also capable of being selfish and and in fact inflict suffering on each other. So our better angels and our inner demons, there's a fine line dividing us. And it depends on the leaders where we end up, because the macrocosm is a reflection of the microcosm. There's a universe inside you. If you don't heal that, what's going to show up outside is a reflection of what's in the leader. So we have to work on ourselves as leaders, and we have to make sure we have the right people in roles of leadership. As John Kenneth Galbraith said, all great leaders have had one characteristic in common: the willingness to confront unequivocally the major anxiety of people in their time. That's what Roy's trying to do. There are many anxieties. That's why our country is going through all this turmoil. There's suffering out there that hasn't been recognized. Can we be part of addressing those anxieties? So Dalai Lama said, our main purpose in this life is to help others. And if you can't help them, at least don't hurt them. We do hurt a lot of people. As the Pope has said, this Pope, by the way, used to be more socialist, and now he's come around to the idea that business can be an extraordinary force for good. That's why he's hosting these things at the Vatican. Enterprises exist to serve. All human activities, including business, can be an exercise in mercy, which is partaking in God's love for mankind. So we take care of the people. It's all about the people. We take care of the people, they will take care of the business, and the business will thrive, and so will they, and so will their children and their communities and their families, this country and this planet as well. Thank you very much. I'm going to end with a request. This is a work in progress. We just started, actually. So we have some stories which are very inspiring, but we are actually looking for feedback, for story ideas, companies that you know of, that we don't know of, any suggestions as well. Please do, because this is kind of based on our community. These are the kinds of things our community does, these businesses do. Thank you very much.